3 fines, 6 weeks. And every single time the league sent the bill, her fan base got louder instead of quieter. If you think that sounds backwards, stay with me, because by the end of this you're going to understand why an entire WNBA front office decided the smartest move was to do absolutely nothing about it. Picture this. A general manager pulls a player aside in front of the whole team. The player braces for bad news, thinking maybe she missed a rotation, blew an assignment, something she can fix. Instead, the GM smiles and says the league is fining her again. Not once, not twice, 3 times in 6 weeks. And instead of shutting her down, the organization just let her keep talking. That single detail is the whole story in miniature, and almost nobody outside Indiana has actually stopped to ask why. This is about Sophie Cunningham, the Indiana Fever, and a fight with the league office that has nothing to do with talent and everything to do with who gets to say the quiet part out loud. Let's rewind to where this actually starts, because it did not start with a fine. It started with a foul. June 2025, Fever hosting the Connecticut Sun, a game that on paper should have vanished from memory within a week. Early in the game, contact near Caitlin Clark's eye during a scramble goes uncalled. Play moves on. Then a few possessions later, Cunningham puts a hard, deliberate foul on the player involved. Both get ejected. The Fever win anyway and roll into the Commissioner's Cup final. But nobody was talking about the score. They were talking about what that foul meant. Cunningham had just answered, in the most direct language basketball allows, something the officials didn't address in real time. She wasn't the star. She wasn't the one every camera followed off the floor. But she was the one who did something when nobody else did, and fans do not forget that kind of moment. That single sequence built more goodwill with the Fever fan base than most players earn in an entire season, and it set the tone for everything that followed. Because the same instinct that sent her flying at that player is the exact instinct that cost her money, over and over, a few weeks later. Fine number 1 landed in July 2025, and it didn't come from a press conference or a heated interview. It came from TikTok. Cunningham posted a clip lip-syncing a pointed line aimed squarely at WNBA officiating. $500, almost instantly. Most players eat that quietly, delete the post, let their agent smooth it over. Cunningham did the opposite. She went on her brand new podcast, Show Me Something, and talked about it on air. That episode became fine number 2. She called officiating inconsistent and asked out loud what exactly a $500 fine was supposed to accomplish anyway. The league's answer was to triple it, $1,500. The message could not have been clearer. Keep talking, and the price goes up. She kept talking. Less than 2 weeks later, fine number 3 arrived. This time tied to a specific complaint about how officiating treated Dallas rookie Paige Bueckers compared to her own team in similar situations. The league never disclosed the exact number on that one. Cunningham disclosed it herself, laughing on the podcast that she'd gone 3 for 3 on league fines in a single season. 3 fines, 6 weeks. Not one moment of backing off, softening, or hedging. Now here's the part that actually breaks the normal script. In most leagues, in most sports, this is where the story writes itself. Fine gets issued. Agent releases a statement about respecting the league's process. Coach says a few words about learning and growing. Story dies in 48 hours. That is the standard playbook, and it exists because organizations hate distraction more than they hate almost anything else. None of that happened here. There was no statement walking anything back. No coach quoted urging restraint. No carefully sanded down non-answer designed to make the story disappear. Instead, there was Fever general manager Amber Cox, pulling Cunningham aside after fine number 2, in front of the entire team, and smiling while she delivered the news. Smiling. That is not the body language of an executive worried about optics. That's the body language of 2 people who've already had this exact conversation before and both know exactly what's coming. Cunningham has described Cox's tone in these moments as closer to amused than concerned, like a colleague breaking mildly awkward, fully expected news to someone she's already decided to trust rather than manage. Sit with that for a second. A general manager whose entire job depends on maintaining a working relationship with the league office is standing there smiling while telling one of her players she's about to lose money for the 3rd time in 6 weeks. That doesn't happen if the front office is quietly hoping she calms down. That happens when an organization looks at exactly who a player is, decides that version of her is worth more than a safer, quieter one, and simply builds the fines into the cost of keeping her. And it's worth being fair to what Cunningham was actually arguing, because it's more careful than the player rips officials headline that usually gets attached to stories like this. She never said officiating is easy or that the refs were lazy or malicious. She said explicitly that it's hard work. Her complaint was narrower than that. She watched one specific pattern of contact repeat itself, visibly, in front of everyone in the building, go unaddressed again and again, and she was frustrated that pointing that out publicly seemed to be treated by the league as the bigger problem than the pattern itself. That's a structural critique from a 7-year veteran, not a tantrum after a tough loss. And she wasn't alone in thinking it. She was just one of the very few willing to put her name and her own platform behind it, repeatedly, without flinching. Now fast forward a full off-season, an entire winter to think about whether 3 fines in 6 weeks was worth it. And the very first opportunity that presented itself in the 2026 season, what did she do? Same thing. Late June 2026, an incident involving Phoenix's Alyssa Thomas making contact near Caitlin Clark's throat area goes uncalled live. Cunningham addresses it on the podcast almost immediately, says plainly she believes opponents are specifically targeting Clark and that officials aren't doing enough about it. Outlets covering the team flagged instantly that she was risking fine number 4. Same language, same category of complaint, same instinct to say it out loud instead of letting it sit. A full year of reflection, and her position hadn't moved a single inch. She even picked up her 3rd technical foul of the new season around the same stretch, which carries its own automatic $500 fine, meaning 2 separate paths were both heading back toward that same hallway conversation with Amber Cox within days of each other. If the disciplinary system had actually worked the way it's designed to work, she comes back in 2026 a little more careful, a little more filtered. Instead, she comes back and says the exact same thing, defending the exact same teammate, the very first time she sees a version of the same problem happen again. That's not someone who got the message. That's someone who never thought there was a message to get. And here's the twist that the league office probably wishes had stayed buried. Right before the 2026 season kicked off, the WNBA itself publicly acknowledged that officiating needed to improve after the previous year. Not a huge, dramatic announcement, but a real, on-the-record concession. The league essentially admitted the exact problem Cunningham had been fined for describing was a real problem worth fixing. She caught that immediately and brought it up on the podcast before the season even started, half joking that the league might owe her a refund on her old fines now that it had basically agreed with her. Delivered with the same dry humor she brings to everything, but underneath the joke was a real point. An organization that spent a full season fining a player for calling officiating inconsistent, then walked into the next season admitting officiating needed to get better, has not exactly proven her wrong. That doesn't mean every individual call she criticized was handled incorrectly. Reasonable people can disagree about specific plays in real time. That's true in every sport, every season. But the broader argument, that a real pattern existed and was worth talking about publicly, got a lot harder to wave away once the league validated a version of it themselves. So why has this made her one of the most quietly beloved players in the entire Fever ecosystem? More than her stat line ever could? Strip away all the institutional noise, and the answer is actually simple. She never positioned herself as the most talented player on that roster. She never needed to be. What she offered instead is something genuinely rare in professional sports right now: a willingness to say the true, uncomfortable thing out loud, under her own name, on her own platform, at her own financial cost, and not retreat 1 inch when the bill arrives. Head coach Stephanie White has talked about her less like a problem to be managed and more like an indispensable utility piece, someone who can slot into multiple roles on any given night. That is not how a coaching staff talks about a player they're worried about. That's how they talk about someone they consider essential, technical fouls and all. Think about how rare that consistency actually is. 3 fines in a single season is enough to make almost any athlete recalibrate, at minimum soften the delivery, maybe route future comments through a publicist instead of a live mic. A full off-season passed, plenty of time to reconsider, plenty of time to decide it wasn't worth it. And the very first time the exact same situation came back around, she gave the exact same answer. That's not someone chasing engagement or manufacturing controversy for clout. That reads like someone who meant it the first time, still meant it through fine 2 and fine 3, and still meant it 12 months later when nothing had changed on the floor. The image of Amber Cox smiling in that hallway, delivering news neither of them particularly wanted to have that conversation about, has become something bigger than a funny anecdote at this point. It's basically a symbol for how this front office actually operates behind the scenes. It says, "We looked at exactly who this player is. We decided that version of her is worth more to this locker room and this fan base than a quieter, safer alternative would be, and we are willing to absorb every bit of the awkwardness that comes with repeated league fines to keep her exactly as she is." There's an easy, lazy version of this story that frames it as a cautionary tale about a player who can't read the room, someone who doesn't know when to stop pushing. And sure, that take exists, and it's not completely without logic. 3 fines in 6 weeks is a real number. The financial hit is real. The distraction risk for a team trying to compete late in a tight playoff race is real too. But that framing misses almost everything that actually makes this worth paying attention to. Because the more accurate version isn't about a lack of self-control. It's about a veteran making a deliberate, repeated calculation that telling the truth out loud was worth whatever price tag the league decided to attach to it. It's about a front office that looked at that calculation and chose not to interfere with it. And it's about a league still figuring out, in real time, how hard it actually wants to enforce its own rules against a player willing to name its inconsistencies in public, especially now that it's already admitted she had a point. This isn't a story with a clean ending. It doesn't wrap up with a lesson learned or a system that quietly fixed itself or a player who finally decided the cost got too high. Right now it's sitting mid-sentence, exactly where it's been since the day Cunningham decided the role she was going to play on this team wasn't the quiet veteran who lets the noise roll past her. She chose the other version. The league keeps sending the bill. She keeps paying it, on time, without complaint, and without changing a single word of what she's actually saying. The version of her behind that podcast, Mike, hasn't shifted since the version that got pulled into a hallway and told the news with a smile. Whether there's a fine number 4 coming is honestly the only real question left. And if you've watched this pattern for 2 straight seasons now, you already know which way you'd bet. Drop your take in the comments, because this one is still being written in real time, and the next podcast episode could add a new chapter to it before you even finish reading this sentence.